All right, in the previous video, we saw how we multiplied and divided complex numbers. So let's just take a quick step back and see how we do this in an example. And again, if you prefer just the theory, I would just say that you should skip ahead and skip this video. But if you like to see an example, then just stay around. All right, let's just say our complex number c is 2 plus I. So the real part is 2 and the imaginary part is I. All right. At the same time, we also have another complex number, let's call it w, and let's make that to be 3 plus 4i. Perfect. Okay, let's first look at what happens if we say c multiplied with w. And as I have said many times, you could remember some long formula, but I'm not going to do that. I'm simply going to write it out, and then I'm going to multiply. So what we have here is just, I have written c out and I'm going to write w out. So that's 3 plus 4i. And now all we have to do is take 2 multiplied with 3 and 2 multiplied by 4i and I with 3 and I with 4i. So we're just going to do that in all black here. So we're going to get 6 because that's 2 times 3. Then we're going to get 2 times 4 plus i. That's going to give us 8i. Then for the other terms, we're going to get 3i because we multiply I with 3, and then we're gonna get 4i squared. And as always, I squared is just equal to minus 1. That's the whole point of this imaginary number I, that we have defined it to be that I is the square root of minus 1. So that's I. And then I squared is of course minus 1. So if we go ahead and use that, then this would actually be, so this would give us minus 4, and here we have plus 6, so that's going to give us 2. And for the imaginary parts, we just add them together, so we're going to get 11i. 11i, perfect. So that is the result. So if we had to multiply c and w, then the answer should be 2 plus 11i. Let's just put a quick box around that, because that's our first result. And now let's go ahead and look at division. So let's take an example division. Here we go. Okay, in this case, we're gonna take c and we're gonna divide it with w. So we're gonna divide it here with w. Now, if you haven't seen the previous video, you probably don't know what to do now. So I would recommend watching that. But if you have watched the previous video, you know that all we have to do when we divide is simply to multiply with the fraction, that is the denominator, what we have in the denominator, over what we have in the denominator, but we conjugate this complex number. So let me say that one more time. We keep this fraction we already had, so that's c divided with w. And then all we do is multiply with this other fraction where we have w the complex conjugate of w and also the complex conjugate of w. So we both have that in the numerator and the denominator, because of course when we have the same in the numerator and denominator, it's simply the same as multiplying with 1, and we're allowed to do that, so nothing's gonna happen from that. All right, let's just write that out. Okay, so what we have is, of course, we have 2 plus I, and then over here we have 3 plus 4i, and down here we have 3 plus 4i, that's w. Oh, sorry, we don't have plus 4i here because it's a complex conjugate, and when we take the complex conjugate, then we flip the sign of the imaginary part. So it's gonna be minus 4i. And the same down here, 3 minus 4i. Now, if you haven't watched the video about the complex conjugates, I would also recommend doing that, because we're gonna use a trick we learned there. And that is that when we multiply a complex number with its complex conjugate, we simply get the real part squared plus the imaginary part squared. So the real part squared, that would be 3 squared, and the imaginary part squared, that would be 4 squared. So what we get in the denominator is purely real. It's a real number. And up here, we are simply going to use the multiplication like before. So we're going to get 2 times times 3, that's 6. 2 times minus 4i this time, that's going to give us minus 8i. I times 3, that's plus 3i as before. And then we have minus 4i squared, but I squared gave us a minus 1, so that's going to be plus 4. There we go. So let's collect the real parts and let's collect the imaginary parts. So we get, whoopsie, let's just zoom in again. So what we're going to get is, well, we collect the real parts, that's 6 and 4. So that's going to give us 10 over, well, down here we have this equals 9, this equals 16. If we sum that, it's going to give us 25. So we have 25 in the denominator. Up here we have minus 8i plus 3i, that's just going to give us minus 5i. And let's just use our fraction rules and separate this fraction. So what we have is 10 over 25 minus 5 over 25i. And if we want to simplify this even further, then we could say that this is equal to 2/5 minus 1/5. And yeah, of course the I is still here. So let me just write that a little better. So like this, perfect. And that would be our result if we had to divide these two complex numbers. And we see that the real part of this fraction, yeah, that would be 2/5, whereas the imaginary part, that would be minus 1/5. So C over W, that would be minus 1/5. And there you have it. That's an example of multiplication and division of complex numbers. I think we're gonna look at the complex plane in the next video. That's a very exciting topic, and I would say it's now that it really gets interesting. So I'll see you in the next video.